You know the recording, I have to break it in. Sorry. Okay, so we have a diagram here. So we have now a bacteria. This is a cell, and it's called macrophage. Macrophage is an antigen presenting cell. It presents antigen or disease causing organism for them to be destroyed by T cells or B cells, or even chemicals like the cytokines and the rest. So let's begin. Bacteria binding to endocytic receptors of macrophage induce their engulfment and degradation. So let's see. This is a bacteria, and the bacteria has some round things on it. That is what we call the antigen, the component of a disease-causing organism that is able to elicit an immune response. It's called antigen. So this is the antigen will bind to the receptor. Every cell has a receptor. So this is the macrophage. It's antigen presenting cell. It is what? Myeloid progenitor cell. So it has what? Receptors on its surface. So the bacteria will bind onto it. Don't go, you finish right now. The bacteria will bind onto it using the antigens to bind onto the receptor. The blue thing is the receptor. After binding, the cell, the plasma membrane over here will what? Will curve inward. We call it engulfment, and form what? A vacuole or a phagosome. So you can see the bacteria inside the phagosome, and it will be destroyed by lysozymes. So it is being eaten up by lysozymes. Then afterwards, it will be what? Excreted. So now we have the phagolysosome here, which has been destroyed. The organism has been destroyed. Then the lysosomes are here. They are going around. Let's see the second one. Here, the bacteria will now shed its component or the antigens onto the receptor. Then the receptor will now transmit a signal. Raphael, off your video. Then the bacteria, the receptor antigen complex will now elicit what? Signal transduction. So signal will be transduced from the receptor into the nucleus. So then the nucleus will now produce what? The signal from the receptor will lead to the nucleus producing inflammatory cytokines. And these cytokines are cells that or chemicals that will go and fight organisms. We will look at them later in other lectures. So let's look at the tonsils that protect the immune system, various sites like the gastrointestinal tract and the respiratory system. So the tonsils, they are patches of lymphatic tissue located at the entrance to the pharynx. Thus, they guard against ingested or inhaled pathogens. For instance, when you inhale nauseous or polluted air containing a lot of infection or organisms, these tonsils, what do we call it? The lymphatic tissues in the tonsils and other places will fight against organisms. Also, when you take in food which is infected, we call it food poisoning. You have what? The lymph nodes producing white blood cells and the B lymphocytes to fight the organisms. So we also have 4 main sets of tonsils. Palatine tonsils. And palatine tonsils are located what? At the posterior margin of the oral cavity or the mouth, inside the mouth, at the back of the mouth. Then we have the lingual tonsils. It's a pair of tonsils that are attached to the roots of the tongue. Whenever you hear lingua, it's lungs, the lungs. So it's leading to the lungs. Then pharyngia is leading to the what? Stomach or the gastrointestinal tract. So pharyngeal tonsil. And the tonsils over here are called adenoid. It's a single tonsil on the wall of the nasopharynx. That's the nose, protecting the nose and what? The mouth, the entrance into what? The esophagus. So we have tuber tonsils. Also, they are what? Paired tonsils at the lateral wall of the nasopharynx, located at the opening of the eustachian tube into the nasopharynx. The eustachian tube is a what? A tube that connects the ear to what? To the throat, like so. It also has a connection with the nose. That's why if you have a nose, if you are having rhinitis or catarrh, it even affects your hearing. You are not able to hear well. If you have ear infection, like otitis media, like any ear infection is called otitis. So either inside the ear, that's media, internal, external, or the middle ear, it's called otitis media, otitis external, otitis internal. So any ear infection will also affect the nose, and any nose infection will also affect the ears. They are connected through the eustachian tube. So let's look at the tonsils. So we have over here the pharyngeal tonsil guiding the esophagus, entrance to the esophagus, and the entrance to the esophagus is called the pharynx. We have the palate, and you have been seeing posters, cleft palate repair. The palate is what? The roof of your mouth, when you open your mouth, the roof of it is called the palate. So we have the soft palate and the hard palate. Getting into the throat is called the soft palate. So we have the palatine tonsil around the palate, because before food will get into the throat, the tonsils have to produce white blood cells and antibodies to fight against infection, so that the food that you are taking inside that is poisonous or that is infected, that porridge that you bought that is having a lot of infection, will not go and cause any disease in your body. Then we have the lingual tonsil that also fight against infection entering the lungs. Okay, so the spleen, that's the body's largest lymphatic organ. The parenchyma exhibits two types of tissue. We have the red pulp and the white pulp. I explained this one earlier on. The spleen functions by producing blood in the fetus. That's when a baby is developing in the womb, we call it what? Fetus. And the fetus does not have, the bones don't produce blood. It's what? The spleen that produces red blood cells for them. It also is a blood reservoir. This is the graveyard for red blood cells. This is where the red blood cells are killed when they are of age. That's 120 days. So we call it apoptosis. That is what? Programmed cell death. And necrosis is what? Unprogrammed cell death or accidental cell death. So white pulp monitors blood for foreign antigens. This one you will read it later. Is part of what I earlier on described. So I have explained this one already. Pathogens. First line of defense. Second line of defense. The third line, whenever we talk about third line of defense, we call it adaptive immunity. That is, if you take a vaccine, the vaccine can make you weak, but later you realize that the vaccine will now produce more white blood. Hello, can you see me? Can you see the slides? Hello? Hello, class? Hello?
Yes.
Can you see my slides?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So like I was explaining, The third line of defense is what? When there is memory. It's like when you get an infection, or you get the reason why we give a vaccine is that the body should to prepare the body against future attacks of the same organism or virus. That's why we give a vaccine. So for when we say third line of defense, that is what? The adaptive immune system. It's like you have been having malaria, so now if you even have malaria today, it is not news. When mosquito bite you, say thousand mosquitoes can bite me today, I will never have malaria because of the frequent exposure I've had for malaria parasites. So my body has developed a residual immunity, meaning that I have antibodies that are protecting me against any additional bites from mosquito. But let a white man come to Ghana right now and get just one bite of a mosquito. Tomorrow he will be at the intensive care unit or emergency ward, because in the white man's land there is no malaria parasite there. So that is what we call the immunological memory. It's your body producing or being able to recognize the same disease-causing organism which was able to cause an infection. Your body will be able to now recognize it in the future and fight it. So that's the main idea or principle behind vaccination. Mariama, off your video. Okay, so non-specific resistance, those who are go and read, they are what? The body itself fighting against the infection. So we have the physical barriers. Non-specific resistance guards equally against a broad range of pathogens. Their effectiveness does not depend on prior exposure. There is no what? Memory production. Skin and mucous membranes are examples. White blood cells, macrophage, antimicrobial proteins, and the antimicrobial proteins are what we call the cytokines and the rest. Immune surveillance, inflammation. When you say inflammation, what? When you get a cut or a swelling, the place becomes red and the place becomes hot, high temperature, and the organisms do not like the high temperature, so they will die. Fever is what? High temperature. And the reason why when you are sick, your temperature goes up is for your body, for the high temperature to kill the microorganisms. That is why your temperature goes up. So that is also a non-specific. It is not specific for any organism. If you get viral infection, your temperature will go up. If you get protozoa, like malaria, it will go up. Bacterial infection, your temperature will go up. So it's not specific. And it's supposed to what? The high temperature is supposed to kill the organism. So, immunity, specific defense because it results from prior exposure to a pathogen. So this one we'll talk about it later, the memory and those things. So let's look at the examples of the external barriers. So go and read external barrier, the skin, the toughness of the skin, the keratin. The skin is too dry and there is no nutrient on the skin, so no microorganisms will grow there. The only places of the skin that microorganisms will be growing is in your axillary region, or your armpit. Your armpit is called axilla, or your pubic region. Why is that place more proliferative for microorganisms? Because the place is moist. There is a lot of humidity, moisture there, and organisms love moisture. That's why we tell you that use deodorant, use lemon in your armpit, but not in your womanhood or in your manhood, because there are normal microflora there. So don't use it over there by your armpit. And make sure when you bath, you clean your womanhood and your manhood. Maybe I'm advising you. Okay, so defenses. Peptides that kill microbes by creating holes inside their membranes. So these are peptides or proteins that kill microbes by creating holes in their membranes, on their plasma membranes. We also have acid mantle. This is a thin film of lactic acid, and you know organisms don't like the lactic acid. Okay, so let's go faster, let's go faster, Simon. So mucous membranes too, what they do is that they are located in the digestive, respiratory, urinary, and reproductive tracts. And your digestive system produces a lot of mucus. Your respiratory system too. Your urinary system, there's a lot of mucous membranes there. What is the function? Mucus physically traps microbes. Mucus also are associated with lysozymes. And lysozymes are enzymes that destroy bacterial cell walls. Subepithelial areolar tissues are also present. And they are not present in mucus, so they are different. They are viscous barrier of hyaluronic acid. And the organisms have hyaluronidase, which are enzymes used by pathogens to make hyaluronic acid less viscous. So hyaluronic acid is viscous, and organisms don't like the viscous liquid like that because they can't travel inside. It's like the mucus. Okay, so let's take a look at, we are about to finish, we are left with only 3 slides. The immune response and immunity. So let me explain this. I will explain in other slides also. So look at it. We have the immune response, the innate. Innate means what? Non-specific. Your body, your system, your natural killer cells, your cytokines, your interleukins, they are not specific. But the adaptive is what we call the antibodies and the T cells, which are specific because they have what? Immunological memory or secondary response. They are able to recognize future attacks of the same organism and produce high levels of antibodies or T cells to fight against them. So let's look. We have state of non-specific and specific protection. So we have, for how do we acquire immunity? There is the natural and the artificial. Very important. Okay, so as a laboratorian or medical laboratory scientist, we have what? The active immunity. That's under the naturally acquired immunity. We have the active. Active means that, like what I explained earlier on, malaria parasite will bite me. And initially, when I was a child, I was getting malaria, but I don't get malaria again because the frequent bite of mosquito gave me malaria parasite, which made me sick because by then I didn't know malaria. But now my body knows malaria from my JSS, SS, and everywhere. Now my body has developed residual immunity or antibodies and T cells. They said they are fed up with malaria, so drive malaria away. So my body is protected. Now when the parasite comes, my body fights against it. So that's the essence of natural active immunity. Then we also have what? Natural passive immunity. The ladies, very soon you are going to be pregnant. How is your baby? Your baby in the womb is called fetus. How is it protected from malaria parasites, from HIV, from hepatitis, from every sickness? You know, the connection between the fetus and the mother is the placenta. And the placenta, the mother feeds the baby through the placenta. The mother produces antibodies called immunoglobulin gene through the placenta to the baby, to the developing baby, which is called fetus. Because when you give birth, it becomes a baby. But inside the womb, it's called fetus. That's after 2 months old to 9 months. It's called fetus. So, you have to produce antibodies to fight infection in the baby, and it will travel through the placenta to the baby, because the maternal blood and the mother's blood and the fetal blood, they don't mix. There is no connection. So the mother cannot give the baby, the fetus, any sickness. Likewise, the fetus giving the mother any sickness. It will never happen. So, also, the mother is able to also give protection to the baby itself. When it is delivered, the baby gets protection from sicknesses and other things through the mother's breast milk, because the breast milk has immunoglobulin A. You understand? So it gives protection to the baby. So that's why they said do exclusive breastfeeding for 6 months without giving water, without giving food for 6 months. Because the breast milk has immunoglobulin A, the breast milk has colostrum, it has a lot of things inside that is good for the baby's health. So the active, passive, the active natural is what? You getting a sickness or infection like chicken pox. Then after your treatment, you don't get the infection again. It's natural. Now the passive is the mother giving protection to the fetus through the placenta, or the mother giving protection to the breastfeeding baby through immunoglobulin A. And the placenta one is immunoglobulin G, because immunoglobulin G can cause the placenta and go and fight infection in the fetus. Let's look at the artificial. Okay, so artificially acquired immunity. This presents itself in this way. This is what we call vaccination. The vaccine that you take is artificial. And the vaccine that you take, the reason why it's not able to make you sick is because the vaccine is the organism itself, but it has been killed, or the organism has been weakened, or the poison of the organism that has been what? Detoxified or made harmless. These are the consequences of a vaccine. The vaccine is a protein, and the organism itself that has been weakened or attenuated. Attenuated is the same as weakened. Or the organism that has been killed, or the poison of the organism that has been made harmless or detoxified. Why? Because if you put a live virus inside a human being, coronavirus, and you are saying it's a vaccine, you haven't weakened it, you haven't killed it, and you are putting it in a human being, you are introducing death sentence, you are killing somebody. So this is what we call active artificial, because the vaccine you are giving is artificial. Then we have the passive. Passive artificial means that those women who have hepatitis B, when they are giving birth, we make them give something we call immunoglobulins. So these are what? Antibodies from immune. We can even go to somebody who had hepatitis B or HIV, but has recovered. So we take the person's blood, then we spin the blood and we take the antibodies or the serum, put it in somebody who is having hepatitis B, and it will cure the person. The same way, there is what? You can also go and buy immunoglobulin. Immunoglobulin G is also, immunoglobulin is the same as antibodies from the market. So when you buy it, those parents, mothers who have hepatitis, you have to tell the midwife and your husband the truth that you have hepatitis, so that you can go for your injection. When you give birth, within 72 hours, they are supposed to give you an injection. It is called immunoglobulin or immunoglobulin G. This injection will protect the baby so that he will not get hepatitis from your breast milk. Because we know that because of the placenta, he cannot get the infection from you when it's inside the womb. But he can get it from the breast milk. So that's why you do the immunoglobulin injection, so that the baby will not get it from the breast milk. Because the breast milk contains a lot of viruses. So that is the essence of our passive immunity, meaning that you are giving the immunoglobulins direct to the person. So when you give, you also give hepatitis B injection itself, so that you protect the baby and give the baby an adaptive immunity or long-term immunity. This is what brings us to the end of the class. Any questions so far? Is there any question? Any question?
No, sir.
Okay, so I'll forward the recording to you, to your
sir.
page. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye bye.